Zephyr debuted on OPTC Global on the 8th of May 2019. Once again, another film legend to debut on a treasure map Sugofest. This was the last of the film legends until the eventual release of Douglas Bullet. The characters in this batch include Bins, pledging alliance to Master Zed, as well as Ein for Master Zed's ideals. And the Sugofest exclusive character of the batch brought even more support to the shooter class. Unfortunately, his captain ability didn't really stack up to the previously released Capone Bedge. However, the special granted matching slots and mass tap timing bonus damage to the crew, which proved to be useful. That is, until the release of normal attacks only. Introducing the man who trained every Navy sailor, Black Arm Zephyr. In this series, we'll be traveling back in time to experience some of the older Sugofest exclusive characters in their prime, aiming to show just what it was like to use these characters on their debut. I hope you enjoy the video, and without further ado, let's enter the Legends of OPTC. So thank you very much for checking out yet another episode of the Legends of OPTC, and this is, I guess, kind of a continuation from the previous video, as we can go ahead and check out even more shooter buffs that are coming to the game at this point in time. Now, Zephyr's interesting because he actually debuted during a treasure map Sugofest, and look, it was a bit of a weird situation because while we did have this new batch to play around with, the highest boosters, at least on Global's treasure map, were actually not even shooter characters, which really poses a really weird situation with Legend Zephyr, because if I remember correctly, I think you do need a full team of shooters to get all of his buffs to activate. It's very, very weird release schedule for this character. But alongside Zephyr, there are two other rare recruits. We have Bins, which is the least desirable character of the batch. Essentially never saw play, but he is a Psi shooter-free spirit. Captain ability doesn't really matter. He does make int slots beneficial to shooters, which I guess is kind of cool. And then he does 40 times his attack in typeless damage to all enemies. He delays all enemies by 1 turn. And if the HP of the enemy with the highest max HP is 80% or less, then it will boost the orbs of shooters by 1.75 for 3 turns. So very, very weird effect. The HP requirement is really what hurts his character, because essentially if you just enter a stage, the enemy with the max HP is not going to have that, and of course with normal attacks only becoming more and more prevalent, specials like this just are so pointless, unless if you have some type of way to health cut around a normal attacks only, which essentially is not really possible. So unfortunately on release, his character just really wasn't that useful, and I mean, he does only just provide an orb boost for 3 turns. The delay didn't really mean much. He's not a conditional booster or anything. So like, honestly, Bins is a really oddly designed character, and he just never really was really good on release, and he never has been a useful character. However, the character after that is Ein, and if any of you guys have been playing for any amount of years in One Piece Treasure Cruise, you guys would know how good this character was on release, and also how good this character has been since this character has been out. So Ein is an int shooter slasher, great class and type combination. Captain ability is just terrible, but does make Psi slots beneficial to shooters, and completely reduces special bind on herself. And then her special at a relatively low cooldown reduces Rainbow Shield and Blue Shield by 2 turns, reduces Bind and Despair also by 2 turns, and if your crew has a Rainbow Shield damage reduction effect, it recovers 20% of the crew's max HP, but if you don't have a damage reduction effect, it then gives you 70% damage reduction. So this character is great because it has a great utility special, and also with the fact that this character got access to double special activation, which means that you can use her special twice in the same turn to remove 4 turns of these defensive effects, 4 turns of Bind and Despair, and then also get both of these effects of applying damage reduction and also getting a heal off of it. And also due to the fact that this character is a slasher, means that you can have the support of Whitey Bay, because it only attaches to a slasher that removes Bind and Despair, which reduces a further 2 turns of Bind and Despair. So this character with the Whitey Bay support can remove 6 turns of Bind and Despair. You have 4 turn removal of Rainbow and Blue Shield. this character was just so good on release and still has seen a lot of play, honestly. And the fact that it's a shooter and it also has barrier penetration obviously has a lot of usage these days. Shooters with barrier penetration are always going to be valuable due to the fact that Ben Beckman and Lucky Root exist now. So that's obviously a big deal. This unit actually had a really good support as well. If the enemy gains blue shield or rainbow shield, you remove 2 turns of it and you get a heal out of it, but it does only attach to Zephyr and Bins. And unfortunately, these characters really haven't seen too much play in One Piece treasure crews, but whenever you opt to use Zephyr on a crew, you do have to remember that this support exists. It's a very, very powerful support. Now we get to talk about the big daddy himself, the Black Arm Zephyr, who is a quick shooter fighter. So interesting class combination for this guy. It would make a lot of sense if he was either like shooter driven or shooter powerhouse, but they opted for shooter fighter, which is very, very interesting. You don't see too many characters that are these classes together. So this character, his base captain on release said that if you had 6 shooter characters on the crew, boost the attack of shooters by 3.25, 3.9 if they have a matching slot, and also 10% damage reduction. So remember at this point in time that shooters, they didn't really have a lot. Obviously, they had Capone that came out recently, and then they get access to this character, which is another great addition. And remember around this point in time as well, that around the 4 times multiplier was what teams were able to achieve a lot of the time. So having a shooter captain that can reach that is obviously very good, and then damage reduction is also a nice addition, but it really didn't do that much as a captain. It was just basically the attack boost and damage reduction. And when you compare it to what you had with Legend Capone that came out, well, yes, Capone has a slightly less multiplier at 3.75. He also gives you a health boost. He has the matching slots as a captain. He heals as a captain, and then obviously you get the benefits of the Capone special. So just comparing the 2 characters, this character was just weaker, just from jump. Despite the fact that he had a higher multiplier, the character didn't do as much. But the special ability would do a 30% health cut to a single target only, which really kind of hurts. Then he does a 50 times his attack in additional typeless damage for 2 turns, and then changes all orbs including block into matching for shooter characters. So again, just full border matching slots. Tap timing bonus damage is kind of cool, but again, normal attacks only essentially negates this. And once again, normal attacks only essentially negates this. Now, if normal attacks only wasn't a thing, this special would definitely be a lot better than what it is, but unfortunately, time has really not treated Zephyr at all. This is a really poor special and just really doesn't do a lot. Of course, with level limit break, he does get a lot of huge effects, and we're still looking forward to a potential super evolution for this character in the future that can really bring some amazing buffs to this character and the shooter class as a whole. So we're really hoping that that is the case. Now, his support is interesting. When the enemy changes your orbs, you change all orbs of shooters into matching through block slots, which is actually really good. But once again, only attaching to iron and bins, so a bit of a drawback there. But overall, Zephyr was not the greatest character on release, and it's just really just the fact that shooters were not really that good, and he didn't really provide enough to shooters to make them even better than what they currently already were. You know, obviously Capone was a big buff for shooters, but this character literally could not have ever released, and it really wouldn't have made a difference with how the meta of the game really was. So unfortunate as it is, this character is not that great, but we're planning to showcase him today, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. In game now with my man Zephyr, legendary former Navy Admiral. Through battling pirates against Whitebeard, he earned the rank of Admiral at a young age. Though his wife and son were killed by pirates, he suppressed his grief and went on to train many famous Navy soldiers. So obviously the character representing One Piece Film Z, or Film Z, depending on how you say it, depending on where you live. This guy here, I did not want to go ahead and use my own Zephyr because my one is max level limit break, because he does actually receive buffs. So this is just a base version with just basic level of limit break. So we're going to be going ahead and abusing this one today and seeing how we can get the job done against a relatively difficult Coliseum. On release was pretty difficult, but of course if you had access to the batch at the time, it was pretty straightforward. But we're going to be using a full-on shooter team today to try and secure victory. Really excited to jump into this one today. So let's go ahead and jump over to the content and show you guys the team. So this is the team that we have today. We're running the double Zephyr team. We have Iron as a crewmate, which is going to be very, very nice for us. And then we've got Borsalino with his Super Evolution, a really strong character for shooter teams, just to secure matching slots, which is going to be very, very useful. And then we've got, what's his name? Pedro. Pedro is going to be really nice just to give us a bit of additional damage when we reach the final stage. And because we can't kill the final stage in 2 turns, that's why we have multiple characters that can give us beneficial buffs. The Ace is a really cool character, but not a typical character you would use in content because he does have a very big drawback to using his special. But the benefits that you get from it, so long as you are on that killing turn, it works out very, very good. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So here we go, final round versus Jesus Burgess. Something that I did mention as well is the ship that we're using. We're using the Kizaru ship, which is actually really cool. It's a really powerful shooter ship that gives you -2 cooldown at the start of the quest for your, I think it's for your whole crew, or is it just for shooters? I think it is for the whole crew. But the attack boost that the ship gives is only for shooters, so it is what it is. But of course, the main thing is we want to make sure that we have specials ready to go. But another thing as well is we want to try and secure matching slots, and so far it's not looking too good for us. We do want to secure matching slots for stage 3 because we want to kill that stage as soon as we possibly can, so we need to get matching slots for that stage. And stage 3 is an not an int boss, it's a psi boss, so we want to actually get a slot at least on our Ein. That's going to be very important for that to happen. So we have obviously multiple stages in order to do that, which is good. We're looking pretty good right now, and because of our cooldown reduction sockets and the ship giving us -2 cooldown, we don't actually have to stall as much as we do for other Legends that we've done in the past. So I guess that is kind of a really cool thing that this team kind of has. The most important slot is the one on Ein, so we can actually use a lot of these slots here, use a little bit of extra time here to get our slots back. And then now we just have the turtle. So things are going pretty smoothly thus far, you know, just stalling for our slots. A lot of combo hits on that Kizaru, which is one of the most annoying things ever. I think we can pretty much move on here. Let's just move on. But yeah, I love using the shooter characters because they're not, you know, the best characters in the game. They're really interesting, and it really makes you think in terms of the way you need to build a team, especially way back in the day when you didn't really have a lot of hardcore, powerful characters. Of course, the V2 Admirals that came out with V2 Sakazuki, V2 Kuzan, both of those characters were shooters, so there was actually kind of like a type-based shooter team that you could run, especially with V2 Akainu, because Int had a lot of really good shooters. Obviously V2 Akainu himself, Capone was an Int character, Halloween Ace eventually also being another Int shooter, Halloween Boa Hancock, there was a Halloween Nami that came out as well. There's lots of Int shooters, and Sai had a couple of good shooters as well, as we can see with this team. So, you know, that was probably another really good way that you could abuse the shooter class in the game. But just mono shooters with, you know, rainbow colors was pretty difficult to build for. But we're here on stage 3 now. We have Bartolomeo. We're just going to do normal attacks on turn 1. And hopefully hit our perfects. So luckily we can actually pierce through that defense, which is exactly why we wanted those matching slots. Now on the second turn, we can just use the Ein special ability because her special will remove the enemy's defense up by 2 turns. So that's great. And because of her double special activation, we can use her special again in the next stage if we need it. If we need it, that is. So now that that defense up is gone, we can just do normal attacks and pretty comfortably get the victory against Barto. No issues at all. Now we go ahead and have a look at stage 4, which is Diamante. Diamante is very annoying. He has, what do you call it, the end of turn damage that occurs, and he also limits the amount of specials that you can use, which is why this content was relatively difficult on release, because you can only use 2 specials per turn, and when you reach the last stage, you'll see that there's just annoying gimmicks that you have to deal with there. So what we're going to do here, we're going to use the Kizaru special. So Kizaru is going to give us a full board of matching slots, and he also does heal us a little bit too. So the end of turn damage that occurred just then from Diamante, we're not going to have to worry about it because we'll have, you know, our health basically hit back to full. And if we stalled a little more, we could have actually used the ship special. The ship has a very interesting special. It does, like, I think it's a 7% health cut to all enemies. It's a really, really neat effect. But with the full border matching slots, we are just going to perform normal attacks, and I don't think it's going to kill. It would have been nice if it was able to kill. I don't think it will, though. If it is, that's awesome. If not, then we'll have to do a little bit of stall. We'll see. Okay, it did a pretty decent chunk of damage. 2.5 million damage just with normal attacks is actually pretty decent. Okay, so Diamante, he's going to paralyze our captains for 3 turns. Now, the thing is we don't really want to deal with that. And we don't have a character that removes paralysis. We can just take our time with this. And realistically, we can just move on when the paralysis is about to expire. That's probably the smartest way to go about it. Nice. We don't need to do too much damage because we don't want to move into the last stage and have paralysis still inflicted to our crew. That is not what we want to happen. We can use the ship special here, which will go ahead and do a little bit of a health cut. Nothing major though. We will take one more turn because he does still have a little bit of health. We do still have a little bit of paralysis on our team. We'll take one more hit, and then with this, we'll be able to move on to the last stage because the paralysis will expire for us in this next turn. We move into the boss stage. Everything's looking good right now. Everything's looking juicy, looking spicy. You love to see it. Here we go with Jesus Burgess, who does have a barrier. You have to hit 2 grates before you can pierce that barrier. So normally shooters are pretty good at this because they have barrier penetration. Not everyone on this team has that though, and you do have to remember that if your HP is low, a lot of your barrier penetration units are not going to be activated. So that's obviously a big drawback. So at this point here, we're going to be using one of our Zephyr specials, which is going to go ahead and at least attempt to do a health cut, but unfortunately the 30% health cut doesn't go through defensive effects. If it did, we could definitely make things work a little bit more in our favor. So we're going to do that, and you know, he does have 1 turn of resilience, so that obviously hurts as well. It means it's really hard to kill him in 1 turn, unless if you specifically build for that, and shooters are not really the best for building for a lot of enemy gimmicks. So at least you can have 2 turns to kill him because he does have a 2-turn cooldown, which is pretty good. This is where we're going to use the special ability of Pedro, which is going to give a color affinity boost to our cerebral characters, which he himself is a cerebral unit. So Pedro himself is going to be doing a lot of damage. So now we want to go ahead and do as much damage as we can. We have to hit 2 grates to pierce that barrier, so here we go. Pretty good damage, 3.3 million, and then the second turn we can launch the rest of our specials here. Well, we can only use 2 specials, of course, but this is where we're going to use our second Zephyr special, which is why we saved both for the final stage, because he does change all slots, including block slots, into matching, so really good to have that. So Zephyr going to do that. He also gives us the tap timing bonus damage, which is a really neat little bonus bit of damage there, especially because of the attack down that is inflicted to our crew. Now, the thing here is that the attack down that's inflicted is actually not that significant. It's not as bad as you would think. So let's go ahead and use the Ace special now as well. So Ace is going to go ahead and give us a full border matching slot. It doesn't go through block though. He also gives us a 1.75 attack boost and a 1.75 orb boosting effect, and I believe he also chain boosts us as well. So he just gives a lot of beneficial buffs, but at the drawback of binding himself for 50 turns. So it is a little bit annoying, but the beneficial effects, especially when he first came out, like a special ability that did all of this was widely considered to be a very powerful special, but the drawback at the time seemed right. Nowadays, we look at some of the specials that we have and we think that this is just absurd, but either way, we have all of our specials ready to go. Let's go ahead and perform our normal attacks and secure victory. Let's get it. Boom, there we go. 4 million damage there. Even though one of our characters was binded, it didn't matter. We still got the victory, which was awesome. So there we go. A full shooter team taking on a relatively difficult Coliseum at the time of this character's release, which is really cool. So really fun little usage of the shooter characters, which were not the best characters in the game, but definitely really fun. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up from me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Next episode is going to be covering one of my favorite characters to ever release in the game's history, and that character is V2 Mr. Slam Jam. So that's going to be a massive, massive episode. Character was really, really fun to use on release, and, you know, unfortunately didn't really see a lot of play after his release. He was good for a couple of pieces of content, he was good for story stuff, but we'll talk more about it once we reach the next episode. So thank you very much for watching the video today. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I will see you guys within the next video.